will let everyone in.
Okay.
Good.
Admit all. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our peer partner fatherhood engagement, the critical role of fatherhood and fathers within our systems. We're so happy that you're joining us today. It is 9 o'clock on the dot. We are allowing everybody to get their technology on board, get on camera, regulate their sound. My name is Danae Shaw, and I am a program specialist with the Resource Center for Family Focused Practice. My areas of focus are everything peer and parent partner and wraparound. I'm so happy to see so many faces that I know and recognize. James, it seems like it's been a million gajillion years. Good morning, sir. How
Good
are you?
morning. Doing well. Good to see you.
So happy to see you, Ellen. Good morning. Haven't seen you in a hot minute. So happy you're here. We are just getting started. It is 9:01. We've had quite a few people register this morning, so we're going to allow everybody to get in the room and get their cameras on and rolling. Again, my name is Danae. Did I say Shaw earlier? I think I did. I did. Getting married is such a crazy thing, and I just recently changed my name, and Danae Lynch. Oh my gosh, shame on me. Yeah, I'm married and I love my husband. Anyway, good morning. Welcome to our webinar, Fatherhood Engagement. We are so happy you're here. Adam, good morning. Mary, hello. Sam, it's been a long time. Melissa, how's it going? We're just letting everybody kind of join our room, get regulated, and join us this morning. We've got the incomparable Mr. Roger De Leon and Robert Martinez with us this morning to give us amazing information around everything fathers, fatherhood engagement, and why our dads are so important with our youth and our families. So we're so happy that you're here today. Brandon, good morning. It's been a minute since I've seen you. Glad you're here and joining us. So if anybody needs to grab a drink of water, pen, anything, go get it now. I am also going to drop in the chat the PDF version of our PowerPoint presentation today, so you'll have that available as well that you can go ahead and grab. Our webinar is also being recorded. So once our recording is up and on our website, we are having a companion focus session where Roger and Robert will be joining us live and in person to do a deeper dive into fatherhood engagement. And that is later on this month. I should know the date, but I'll know it before we start. Jean, good morning. How are you? Jean Filson, she is a rock star, was at our last Partnership for Wellbeing Institute and was on our parent panel. Good morning, Jean. So happy to see you.
Good morning. Congratulations on the name change.
Thanks. I know, that was so embarrassing. All right, everybody, it is 9:03. Let's get started. Again, my name is Danae Shaw, and I am a resource specialist with the Resource Center for Family Focused Practice. I'm just excited this morning, right? This is our second webinar in our series for our peer partner community specifically. That's why I am bursting with joy. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. For our webinar, Strengthening Families, the Critical Role of Fatherhood Engagement. We are excited to have Robert Martinez and Roger De Leon come together to explore the importance of engaging fathers in our work with youth and families. Fatherhood engagement is a key factor in both youth success and family sustainability, yet it has been often overlooked and deprioritized in many systems. Today, we're going to discuss why it matters, how we can check our own biases, and what it takes to create safe and exclusive spaces for fathers, especially when historical and systemic barriers have made engagement challenging. One important thing I would like to acknowledge is that every county and organization approaches fatherhood engagement differently. While we will be covering key themes and strategies today, the specific policies, resources, and approaches may vary based on your local systems. If you have any questions that are specific to how this applies in your county or organization, we encourage you to follow up with your local leadership or appropriate entities to learn more about what's available in your area specifically. Throughout the session, we'll have opportunities for reflection, discussion, and practical takeaways. We encourage you to stay engaged, bring your perspective, and most importantly, keep an open mind as we explore the critical conversation around fatherhood engagement. Today, both Robert and Roger are open to taking questions live in person as they're presenting today. So I encourage you to either use your raise your hand feature. You can absolutely put your question in the chat, or you can come off mute at any time. Now I would like to call in Robert Martinez and Roger De Leon for your presentation today around fatherhood engagement. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you for that introduction. Our partial introduction. We will be doing more of the introduction in a moment. Just want to thank you for the opportunity and thank you for joining us and giving us the privilege to share space with you, to share about this very important subject matter that I know Robert and myself really share a passion for. Not just because, you know, we work with individuals, with fathers in these spaces and these agencies, but because we are fathers ourselves, right? I'm also a grandfather. I'll speak a little bit more about that in the introduction, but that's why we really have a passion for this going forward. And so what we want to do before we get into more of the introductions of ourselves, we want to be able to know who's in the room. Who are the rock stars that came to be a part and just to grace us with your presence, you know, today? And so can we go to the next slide, James, please? Thank you. So introductions, what we want to do, since we are a very large group, and if we go around, that would be the whole webinar, right? We want to go ahead and ask you if you can please put it in the chat, answer these questions, right? Your name, your role, your county, and of course the icebreaker question is, when you think of a father figure, whether in your personal life or from your work experience, what is one word that comes to mind? So father figure, right? Father figure, we're talking about stepfather, uncle, grandpa, you know, a friend's father, a coach, right? A minister, you know, a pastor or youth minister, you know, anyone who played that role that can give you some type of that gives you that reminder of a father figure. And sometimes when this isn't thrown out there, sometimes we tend to think, oh, I don't have a father figure. And then we realize, oh, wait, I did have one, right? And at the same time, we know that not every experience was great. So we are father advocates, but at the same time, we are realists. So if you do that, we'd love to see your response and see who's in the room and what we have. So we can get some help on looking into the chat. Okay, Eric. All right. Happy to be here with you all. All right. Advocate. Let's see. So do we have anyone that would put out there in the chat your the father figure, right? Something about them, whether in personal life or work experience. What was one word that comes to mind? Role model. Okay, here we go. I'm just not reading fast enough. I apologize. If you see anything as well, Robert, call them out.
Okay. Let's see.
You had warm hugs, hero, impactful, provider, protector. I love the warm hugs, Janelle. That was beautiful.
Safety.
Nice. Patient. No, that's a big one. You know, you think at when your child hits 18 that you're done. I realize it's another beginning.
Yeah.
Mine's 28 and she still comes to my house shopping. So interesting. 5 minutes away from me, and she comes over, and next thing you know, I'm watching her go into my fridge and start grabbing stuff and all that. And so I was like, okay, you never left.
Yeah. So loving, protector, role model. I see a lot of good ones.
Disciplinarian. Okay. Educator, disciplinarian. So we had a lot of role models. We have a lot of just some warm hugs and different things like that that really just bring kind of a little theme of what our father figures are. And the reason why we do share this part, especially looking at the very beginning, is I always throw out a question. One, the reminder of who was the one that imparted inside of us, right? That what a father is should be, but also the thing that comes along with it at times that we sometimes aren't mindful of is, and the question I ask is, could it play a role in our bias when working with fathers? You think about how we were raised, or the individuals who played a part in us. And many of the trainings that we've had, we asked that question and we've had some responses. I don't ever ask to answer the question. Okay. I always put that out there just for us to kind of think as we're going through and all that. But there are those who are bold enough to come off and say, you know what, I just thought about this, and it really does set up this way that I view a father when they come, especially when the characteristics either match or don't match the father figure that I had. Whether it was biological dad, stepdad, or whoever, but there was something that at times played a role and got us to, got them to start thinking, wow, you know what? I do treat certain dads, or I do paint pictures, and sometimes it even stemmed from, these horrible divorces, right? And horrible custody battles. I've had someone share something like that. So, but I do want to thank you all for sharing a piece of you, right? I do want to share that if anything is shared here, from myself, I give permission to be able to share out. But anyone else who's here, if there's a conversation that happens, that we just respectfully keep it here, right? And at the same time as well, sometimes in talking about father figures and father roles, we want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, right? I've had in different trainings where someone had just lost their dad, and so it can become overwhelming. So please take care of yourself. If you want to send a private chat or anything like that to us, then you don't have to get into details. Just let us know if it brings up memories or anything like that. Please take care of yourself. I'm sorry, Robert, you were going to share something?
Oh no, I feel the same way. Like, let's just keep it in here, so that this is a safe space to speak on um whatever you may need to further your engagement with fathers.
Absolutely, absolutely. So can we go to the next slide, please? And this part, you get to hear about us. Oh, sorry. We're going to try not to take too long, but Robert, do you mind going first?
Sure. So, my name's Robert Martinez. I was a parent partner in Alameda County for 9 years before coming out to Contra Costa County, West County, and Richmond, to do the same type of work. So I've been here almost three and a half years. So I have a total of about 13 years of experience being a parent partner or a parent advocate, working for the counties. Most of my cases are county involved. Actually, all of my cases are county involved. I also went through the system with my own family. When my boys were newborn and 2 years old, I went through that whole process. Had a lot of things to do: domestic violence, um, substance abuse, therapy, parenting classes, on top of also having to take care of my mental health, which I wasn't doing. So now my boys are 14 and 16. They're doing great. Family's still together. I've been doing this work for quite some times with the focus on fathers. I am one of the founding members of the Alameda County Fathers Corps, which was founded in 2013. I am considered one of their mentors, and have been doing this work with love and care, ever since then. Looking forward to sharing some of the information that I have with you, to engage fathers.
Thank you, sir. Wow. Thank you. How do I follow up with that? It's wonderful, wonderful. So my name is Roger De Leon Jr. I am a father with lived experience as well, navigated child welfare system, family law, and child support. So for me, I think what qualifies me to be able to teach on this is that I am like I shared with you, my daughter still comes over, right? But I also have 4 beautiful grandchildren that I get to share space with. And they're 5 minutes away, but they're always here. So grandpa works from home. So in the mornings they come. And so I get the privilege of being able to spend some time with them in the morning, give them breakfast, make sure they get ready. And then I have my mom that also helps to be able to take them to school. And so I'm still involved. My youngest one is actually going to be 4 months in a couple of days, which I'm excited for. And so I have all these wonderful little ones that are still running around. Yes, I still change diapers. Yes, I do laundry, and yes, I do dishes because I'm more home than my wife is, and we share the responsibilities all together. So with that being said, I'm also a trainer for UC Davis, as well as the other academies across California. My trainings are on father engagement, child welfare, and of course peers. I am a peer at heart. I was one of the first parent partners that was hired for Riverside County Children's Services and helped develop that program from the ground up, and it's still going. I also am one of the co-founders of the Dad Assisting Dads Coalition out here in Riverside County that is still going as well, and I'm participating in that. I resigned. It's going to be 2 years from the county to go fully independent contracting, and I was also the co-chair for the mandated reporting to community supporting task force under the California Child Welfare Council. And so just a couple of things that I was privileged to be able to do. I'm also an assistant minister and a youth minister in my community. I've been doing that for well over, 20 years. So still involved heavily with families. I still consider myself a parent partner. I love, being around peers and then supporting peers and so on. And I'm also a big father advocate. I get to travel and train and just do a lot of wonderful things. Even within my backyard, I was training child support on father engagement. So within our county, I will stop there, right? Because it's not about me, right? It's about dads in general and going forward, but it's also about you, wonderful individuals who I am hopeful that I would be able to hear from you because I come to these trainings not just to speak out, but to take in, right? Because I know that as long as I've been doing this, which is still, it feels like a dream, that I never had. I get to learn from you all as well. So, Donna, you got your hand up?
Yes, oh gosh. Anna, Anastasia, I try really hard to say names. She would like, Robert, to repeat the name of the organization you work with, Father Corps of Alameda. She wasn't quite sure.
It's First Five Alameda County, the Father's Corps.
Is that helpful? Okay. All right. She said, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Donnie. Thank you. Yeah. So, all right. So without further ado, why don't we go ahead and jump into our first part here? And so we can go to our next slide, which is going to be a poll, right? Counties and providers across California may all take a different approach and emphasis when addressing fathers. So we're going to take a poll. We want to see where you're coming from. We want to see where you're at with father engagement. We know that everyone comes from different places, right? And so if you can just answer these questions to these polls so that way we can get a feel of who's in the room and the expertise that we have in the room with us. So I'll give you a moment just to go ahead and answer these. How would you describe your county organization's current level of fatherhood engagement? Nice, 45%.
Mm, yeah.
Keep going.
I love that during the poll, most of those are very active, moderately. You're seeing some really good engagement. Some are being transparent, limited. We appreciate that.
Mhm. That was amazing. Over the years of doing this, I didn't realize this when I first came in, that this was something that was needed. I didn't come in, saying, hey, I'm going to establish these type of things. Kind of walked into it, but I seen the change and transformation, and this polling is just reminding me of how far we've come. But at the same time, how far we need to go, how much more we need to go. So we're at 81%.
James, you want to go ahead and post the poll so we can see the results?
Gene, you're absolutely right. I know I'm in this for the long haul, right? No matter how far we go, there's always going to be something to do, something to go forward. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right. So we have for number one, moderately active, right? So that's a high percentage, engaged fathers occasionally, but could do more. Limited activity, and of course, very active. We actively engage fathers in various ways. Nice. For the second question, does your team currently focus on supporting youth in building or strengthening their relationships with their father or father figure? That's important, right? We don't want to miss that opportunity to make sure that we are inclusive when we talk about the peer community, and we're talking about youth as well. And so, working with youth is vital that they have both parents. This is not a mom versus dad thing. We're going to be talking about how, when both parents are engaged, right, the impact it has, whether they're together or not together. So it is important to bring up about the youth. We want to make sure that we're including of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Peer partners, or team number three. Field support number three, once again, somewhat leadership provides educational support. And that's one of the other things that we really try to target as well, is leadership. We know that if we are able to, reach executive coming down, it's going to be more impactful. And so we really look at also how that works as well. So thank you for the poll.
Yeah.
So we're going to go ahead, close that piece up. Any questions so far? I know we're just getting started. Oh, my thing is getting stuck. I apologize. So real quickly, how did you feel about that? Looking at the polls and all. Uh-oh.
I see Susan has left a chat in there, and it says, Mr. De Leon, I was just talking about your story to one of my fathers yesterday, telling him how there was no to very little support for fathers back when you had your case, right? And how important it is to have those services today. I believe that's true, because during my case in 2009, there was no fathers meetings for me to go to, no support groups for me to go to. 95% of social workers are all women. And everyone in the parenting class, well, at that time, the parenting classes were it was full of women. Very few fathers engaged besides myself. That's what I remember. So yeah, these matter.
So Caleb, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm also not surprised. I think in social services or health and human services, there tends to be a focus. It tends to echo toxic masculinity, that a man needs to be strong. A man can't cry. A man provides. A man doesn't need support, and or it also echoes a sentiment that a man is the harmer, that the man, if they're not doing those things that they bring harm, that they need to be removed from the family and removed from the community. There's not a lot of emphasis on how men can be healers, or how men can heal, how men can be mentors, how men have value in the community. So I think it is a very a Western lens on how the role of men and fatherhood is. And uh, and I think that a lot of men suffer in silence, also young men, boys. And I think that it's a vicious cycle.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Good
Go ahead.
job, Roger. I was gonna chime in to see if your technology was working, but
Yeah. So yeah, my apologies behind the scene. My technology is kind of acting up a little bit, so I may be in and out. So just so you know, my apologies and all that. And so with Caleb, I agree, and it's also important that we are very cultural sensitive. And so I know that we have both, right? The different ways that we're trying to bring, fathers to be able to have that opportunity to share with themselves. At the same time, we want to also make sure that we're not stepping on the cultural piece to others who have been brought up differently. I think it has to be a balance. But you're right. You're absolutely right on bringing that out. And so this is why this work is so important, but at the same time, it's not locked down to just one way of doing things, right? To be culturally competent or culturally sensitive, it's going in and learning the family's dynamics, learning the father's dynamics with his family, and being able to do that. Now, if there's issues that are taking place, of course, we want to be able to do that, but we want to be able to step carefully, because if we do call ourselves cultural sensitive practices and agencies and all that, that's also part of it. But thank you for bringing up that point. It's very important that we do bring that out. And so anyone else want to share on the polling, anything that comes to mind to you? If not, we can move on. Okay. All right. So I'll take that. And of course, as always, something comes up, please put it in the chat, and we'd like to continue looking at that as well. So that
I'm sorry. I was going to share that sometimes, even though the father's in the picture, they don't want to engage in services. They leave it up all to mom. So sometimes it's also very, very hard to engage them.
Yeah, I would,
absolutely.
yeah,
Go ahead.
Absolutely agree with that.
yeah, I agree with that. Over the years, I've seen fathers, engage and not want to be engaged. It just, it's a straight up conversation with them. Do you want something different than what's been happening? Your time with your child. And speaking, truthfully, that when they're in that process, they're looking for permanency for the child as soon as possible. So for them to be open to say, what do you want from this process? Or do you want anything from this process? Because it's going to have to take work from them. And if they aren't willing to engage in that process, then we need to move forward. Right. But I check in with my fathers, even though they've said, oh no, I don't want to engage right now. Or, it's usually, a lot of times it's about the relationship with mom. Right. Like, I don't want to deal with that. I'm not dealing with that so just talking through that and getting them to a place where they feel comfortable enough to even engage in that conversation. And it may not be a social worker that they're comfortable in engaging with that conversation in. So it's important for us to dig in a little bit and see what's really going on, with those fathers.
Absolutely. So we have Ruby and Susan, and then we'll go ahead and move on, because a lot of what we're talking about, we're going to talk about.
Yep.
right? That's how we're gonna get a little bit more deeper in there. So, and please keep going with the chat. Ruby, go ahead.
I just wanted to add when we're talking about this topic that a lot of times fathers walk into working with child welfare kind of feeling like we're automatically going to dismiss them. So why should they be actively engaged? And it's up to us as social workers to kind of change that mindset and let them know that they are important, because I see a lot of dads walk in like they're not important. We're just going to dismiss them. It's all about mom, so I'll let mom take the lead. When no, we have to bring you to the forefront, because fathers are just as important as mothers. And people forget that absent fathers make an impact as well. So we have to try to address all of that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I agree with that. They've also most likely been involved in other agencies of government that they haven't been so treated well in, and they've heard things for years about organizations, right? And so they come with their guard up.
Yeah, and so we're gonna go ahead and move forward so we can start talking about a couple of things, but I do want to address something that was in the chat that was written, and that was that we were made to believe dads are the only heroes. And I think, you know, the one thing about it is when we talk about fathers, we talk about men in society, they have the upper hand work-wise. But when it comes to agencies, and we're going to talk more about that as well, we're going to get a little bit more into detail on that, they don't, right? And so if we're being transparent, there's a lot of work that there's things have transpired, but there's some work that needs to be done with it as well, right? We know automatically, I came from a single mother home, right? And so we know that moms are important, they're vital. Agencies know that. And this is why agencies, you know, have been doing this for years. And we're going to talk about a little bit of the history and all that going forward. But just to kind of address that a little bit, they're both important, right? This is why I said this is not a dad is better than mom or anything like that. This is the importance, especially for the kiddos. So can we go to the next slide, please? And so our learning objectives for today are to understand the importance of fatherhood engagement, right? And participants will be able to understand the critical role fatherhood engagement plays in promoting youth success and family sustainability, right? So we're gonna be diving deeper into that. Identify and address biases in fatherhood engagement, which we began to do that, and we're gonna go deeper into doing that reflection on our own bias. And I will put that, if you've been in my trainings, I put myself in the forefront to say I have biases too. I have been caught in my own biases. I've learned my lesson. I put myself out there because I'm not one that points outward without looking at myself and say, hey, we all have biases. And I've shared that piece with those who have been in my trainings, but at the same time, I'll share it again. I have biases too, and I have to work through that in order to be able to be of service to dad, to mom, and to the whole family, right? Especially the kiddos. And of course, acknowledge and support fathers' emotional and trauma-related needs. I think sometimes what happens is that we forget that dad also has trauma. And he also comes with things. We talk about, you know, different agency interactions and so on. And like I said, we're going to get into deeper a dive on the history of things, but also to remember that dads are human and they do also have trauma that they come with, and that plays a big role. So we'll go ahead and go to our next slide. And that is the power of fatherhood engagement, right? How important is fatherhood engagement? And so looking at the emotional stability and support for youth and families. So these are facts. These are things in research that have come out. So it brings these things, right? And so the positive role modeling, not to mention the impact of that. And one of the things that I really press into is when fathers are engaged. And so as you know, I shared with you, I'm also part of a coalition. So I speak to dads in the community as well. And so one of the things that I advocate for is for dads, not just with agencies, but with dads themselves. And one of the things that I share with them is, hey, look, you know, I hear you, and we're willing to go to agencies to be able to share with them the importance of opening opportunities for resources, because let's be honest, mom is not the same as dad. And for years, there have been times where dad has been sent to a parenting class that was specifically for mom. Now, I will say there has been some changes. At the same time, there's still some of these things that still come out where dad's like, well, this is all for mom. And what is the response that's given when he's saying, what about for me? Well, you can figure it out, right? And so we want to build those positive role models. We want to make sure that we're, helping dad as well as mom and the kiddos, giving them what they need. And so, and of course, the unique contributions to family dynamics, right? What dad brings to the table, his engagement piece. And as I was sharing, when I speak to dads out there in the community, I'm telling them, hey, if we're doing this and we're sharing with the agencies to be able to bring these resources out, dad, we need you to pick up these tools and be a part of your kiddos' lives, whether you're with mom or you're not with mom, right? To also give mom that support that she needs as well, right? So that way there's a balance. It's just want to throw out there. Did you want to share anything, Rob?
I see
Robert?
Susan's hand up.
Yeah, I just had a comment about this, and I think these trainings are so important. I love coming to these because as much as I give for my moms, I give for my dads too, because I've seen the transformation from like 6 years ago, that when I first started learning about all this and how important dad's roles are. Just recently I wanted to share that it's a team effort. It's not just the social worker, not just the peer partners, not just dads needing to change, but everybody, even from the parents as well, from moms as well, it's a team effort for everyone to see each person's role, right? And one of the things that I've noticed recently with one of the dads that I've been working for about maybe 7 months is, at first he was like, hey, I'm the provider. I'm so used to providing, like, this is what I do, right? And he's like, I make this much amount of money, right, during the year. I see my kids this amount of time. I'm providing the rent, the home, the food, the school supplies. If there's food, there's lots of food in the fridge. If there's no dinner on the table, then that's mom's fault. If mom is putting dinner with whatever she has on the table and I'm not putting nothing in the fridge, that's my fault. And he came in like that, very strong-headed. And recently, the social worker was like, for example, dad came to visit and he's like, okay, I want to engage with my kids. He brought all his kids those little games. I'm not sure what they're called. They're little games in the hands that you can come and play. You play Super Mario on and all that.
Yeah.
So he brought all his kids a toy and himself so that at the visit they could play. And social worker, like, I saw the effort and I'm like, hey, maybe we could have utilized that like 30 minutes at the end after you've read to your kids, after you've played with them, you've laughed with them, you've ate with them, you cleaned up with them during the visit. And we could have incorporated that. Hey, social worker, does 15 minutes count at the end of a visit after it's been successful, that we can play? Because that's his way of bonding. But I'm not sure for what reason, but the social worker was like, no, like, this isn't acceptable. Look what he brought. And in my mind, I was trying to see dad's point of view. And sometimes that's discredited, is although they're trying to change, they're still slowly changing. And so I'm not sure about, that's why I continue to come to these, because that's why I'm able to advocate for them. Like, when we're there, all three of us, the social worker, myself, and dad just said, no more. They said, no, I'm not going to do it. And he's going to learn new ways to bond, which he is, so I just wanted to share that, because I don't know if I'm trying to see more, or like, how can I continue to support this dad when I see some small efforts like that and still lots of changes. He's attending everything,
Right.
She just wants to see more from him.
Absolutely. And that's great, Susan, because I know that there's a lot of times that I've worked with fathers and I've had one tell me, just to think about it, he was incarcerated for majority of his life, and he says, can you teach me how to be a good father? And so I said, okay, well, tell me what you do. And he started to share that, his son was starting to walk. He'd take him to the park. He'd go and play with him, put him on a slide and all, and he'd take him home. And this was his visit. He'd wash him up and he'd make some lunch for him. I said, man, you're an awesome father. The problem is nobody ever told him that.
Yeah.
He had tattoos all over and all. So the assumption was, oh, well, he's dangerous. Right. And so I think that when we're looking at these, and this happens across the board, to a lot of fathers. Now, I will say, on the other side, I've seen individuals come in, you know, and share their stories, social workers and so on, where they're, you know, they have these fathers who just like, wow, this is my hero right here. You know, one comes to mind who's living in another state now that still keeps in contact with his old social worker. She's no longer practicing, but they friendship because she was there through thick and thin to support him. You know, even when he relapsed and he had twins that were medically fragile, and she was right there with him the whole way. She, you know, of course, got on him when he made a mistake, but did not down him. Until this day, years later, because he keeps in contact with me as well through Facebook, he still has that, that contact. He's my social worker, who owes me that. And he has such an appreciation. He actually owns half of a company on real estate now. He talked about success and look back. You know, these are the impacts of.
Roger, your technology is a little wonky.
Sorry, it's you got most of that. Maybe it's just telling me
We
it's
did.
time to move on. So, but yeah, yeah. So can we go to the next slide? Thank you, Susan, for sharing.
Yes.
So engaged fathers lead to, and so once again, this is more statistics out there, improved youth academic performance, enhanced emotional well-being, strengthened family bonds.
And
Right.
this is
So once
proven.
again,
Yeah, this is proven stuff.
absolutely, absolutely. And so I know that sometimes we have some statistics that are not all the way up to date. You know, the thing that I share with everyone is that there are times when they don't do these research is strong, you know, research is for fathers, but they're looking. I believe there's one being done as of right now because of that important piece. So, you want to share, Robert?
Yeah, and I see it in the work that I do. I definitely see it in the work that I do, that families that are not broken but bent in the beginning of these cases, as they get closer and they work together in co-parenting, um, a lot of the stuff has to do with co-parenting and um, the two parents on how the child develops. And so I see it in the academic performances at school. I see it, you know, their therapies. They're improving.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've also seen where, you know, where dad got involved. Unfortunately, mom wasn't in the picture. And so, you know, when he was having issues with his social worker and the kids were feeling it, their grades started to fall. And then when he became more involved and there was a shift in social workers and all that, one of his kiddos got a scholarship to play volleyball, did great with grades and all that. So, and one of the things about the academic piece that I learned, there was a study that was put out there where, and don't shoot me, but this was a study. They said that when a dad reads his kiddos, there's more of a response with his kids in school, learning to read more quickly and doing these. And so the study I went to a workshop where they shared about this, and it was the fact that dad would become more animated, right? And I'm not saying moms don't do that, but for me, it came to life because I'm like that. You know, if I'm reading a book to, you know, when my daughter was little, I'm becoming a dinosaur, I'm becoming a lion, and I end up on all four, my hands and knees, and I'm crawling around. And then my grandkids are running over, can you read this book? Can you read this book? And I'm like, you know, I'm working. I don't mean to be, you know, as grandma. And they're like, no, no. And I realize not that grandma doesn't know how to do it. I'm on all fours and they're jumping on my back and all that. And so that was part of the study that was coming out about that animation piece. Once again, it's not pinning anyone against anyone else, right? You know, I love my mom. I came from a single mother home, and I appreciate her for everything she's done and given me. So it's not any of that. There's just research that comes out with these things on the engagement. So, shall we move on to the next slide? You want to take this, Robert? I deal with a little bit of this technology stuff.
Yeah, so some outcomes of father engagement, right, is improved academic performance, right? We have 87% of a positive increase in impact, right? Enhanced emotional well-being, 82%, right? Lowers risky behaviors, 57% when fathers and both parents are involved. Stronger family bonds, right? 92%. We're just speaking about fathers, right? Let's not forget fathers have family members. And when we're working within child welfare, it's very important to identify both mothers and father side of families. Higher economic stability, we all know. Maybe before you could have a one parent working family. Nowadays, even with two is a struggle. I'm over here with, I have my wife, it's a struggle. And so I could just imagine if it was just me or just her, right? Does anyone have anything to speak on about these outcomes?
I think the statistics are always worth showing, you know, and as you gentlemen have been speaking, I think it's really important. I know we're talking, and you just said it so beautifully, Robert, that we are talking about dads and fathers, but in relations to families in general, dads can look, and a father figure can look so many different ways. And I know we say fathers in this webinar specifically, but really when we're talking about our kiddos, what does a father figure look like for them? Is it an uncle? Is it a brother? Is it a family friend? And these statistics are true when you're bringing on biological fathers. Maybe it's a resource father that a child's become connected to, an uncle, a brother, someone. And that is a really important fact, I think, to bring to the forefront as well. James, you want to go to the next slide? I'm popping in, Robert. We're
Hey.
also letting Roger, because his technology has been a little wonky, so
Yeah.
he's gonna fix that. So I'm helping along the way as well. And I think another
Welcome.
thing that we really need to bring to the forefront is systemically, we have removed our fathers. I want to say in the 1930s is when the Aid to Families of Department of Children Act came in. And this established and discouraged the presence of fathers in the household. Eligibility for assistance that required fathers to not be in the home, and that's how moms were able to get aid for their families. This then moved to when fathers were incarcerated, and I'm going to age myself, the war on drugs in the 80s and 90s. And a disproportionate amount of men were affected, particularly fathers of color. And this was through those mandatory prison sentences, and the 3 strikes law were absolutely affecting our dads. If you're moving a little bit farther, there was the Child Support Welfare Reform Act. And this was while fathers were held accountable for financial support, the policy and disproportionality impacted low-income fathers who mainly couldn't afford the payments. Fathers who failed to pay those child support faced penalties. They were again possibly incarcerated and further marginalized in their roles due to that Child Support and Child Welfare Reform Act. There are labor and economic policies that continue to decline and have jobs be taken away from our fathers. This was in the mid-20th century. This affected working class men, undermining their traditional role as breadwinners. There was an adoption and foster care policies that preferred maternal custody. So early child welfare policies often favored mothers, sidelining fathers as primary caregivers. And I know that we have done so much work in this regard, but it still happens. Policies that have failed to involve fathers in the decisions in their children reinforce this perception of fathers as secondary and absent figures. You know, I want to say Robert, or excuse me, it's the Roger and Robert. Roger and I were having this discussion, I want to say 5 years ago, where we were looking at different letters and how organizations and counties were doing their paperwork. And the paperwork's absolutely said mothers. It didn't say parents, family. The verbiage mothers was called out. And so part of the work that Roger and I were doing, we're like, hey, what about dads? Why are we calling out the fathers? Why is your documentation only looking and focusing on moms?
It still
that was-
happens.
Yeah, and it's a huge disparity when we're looking at youth and families, you know?
I
Someone
could-
said it earlier too, Robert, and I'm gonna let you talk in a second,
Yeah.
that we also disregard moms. You know, if a child has been taken out of the home, sometimes there is a focus on the resource family, and we're not looking at the family that we're reunifying with. Robert, take it away.
I go to supervisors, to the social work, child welfare supervisors to try to get answers. And I say, what's going on with this case? And I mention the father's name and they say, who's the mother? Right? They don't even know the father's name. They have no idea, but they're supervising over the case. And it's like, I have to give them the mother's information. And it's been like that for years, even in, you know, in multiple counties. And it still continues to this day, you know.
Absolutely. Adrina, come on in.
Good morning. Just to kind of make a comment on that, the reason we ask as a supervisor, the reason we ask for the mother's name is because that's where we're able to find the family composition in our system. So when we ask for the mother's name, it allows us to follow that. If they ever ask you for the father's name, then we can look as well. But a lot of times we ask for the mother's name because it allows us to review the entire family composition. And then oftentimes, sadly enough, the fathers aren't added to those compositions, but a lot of times we ask for the mothers because that's how we're able to primarily identify the family.
Yeah, and that's a concern of mine. Why can't you figure how to make that so if you do look at either of the parents, that the whole family composition is there?
Because oftentimes during the investigations, mom won't want to release that information to us. So a lot of times we may not even get dad's information until we have to do our own searches and finding for it. And then we have to go back and add that. It's not that they're not inclusive of it, but it's just mothers are not always forthcoming with that information.
Yeah.
Yeah, working within the child welfare, and I apologize, my technology's trying to get it going. So I think we got it. But yeah, I truly understand that piece. The part I think that really gets to me, and I'll say this, you know, in a transparent way, and of course I'm open to anyone responding, is that when I've seen cases where mom has, you know, passed away, and it's still in her name, and dad's there, right? And so I get it, you know, Adrina, when, you know, I know that there's that time where there's, whether it's gatekeeping or, you know, real safety reasons why mom is not releasing information. I get that piece, you know, and totally understand it.
Yeah.
You know, not to mention the paternal results and all, to make sure, and all these other things, which I'm still, if a father's showing up and saying, I'm the dad and all that, we still want to take his test and so on. But I think more on looking into that would be for, you know, for me is when a mom has, you know, passed away, you know, it still stays in her name. And so but at the same time, I will say this, because I've trained throughout the state, I've heard where in some counties, they do change it to dad's name. So, you know, we do hear the ups and downs to all these different things. And I think that when we're talking about just, you know, this, I mean, just this alone, the history of the systemic removal of fathers, we have to also understand that communities talk, that the stigma that is there is real. And the one thing that I've explored throughout the years of working, you know, and then, you know, with all kinds of agencies is this: you can do 100 things right, and all you have to do is one thing wrong, right? And that's what will stick, especially because there's a history that's behind it, right? And I think that, you know, looking at these things, is just a reminder of why it's hard for fathers. I mean, we had it earlier where, well, dads just, they don't want to be involved. And it could be, don't get me wrong. But remember this, no one wakes up one day and just decides, I want to abuse substances, let alone wakes up one morning and says, I want to lose my kiddos to the system. Not to mention, we don't know the upbringing. And once again, we'll bring it back around, the trauma, right? And then, of course, with everyone, sharing in the community, which we're trying to really attack, and that is the stigma that is out there that these government agencies are not for dads. And so, and then of course, you have, of course, bad practice at times, and not throwing shade at anyone. But when you look at these bad practices, it just goes and gives the community more of a, you know what, that's why. See right there how I'm being treated. And if a dad is showing up, even if they're quiet or silent, right there, I will tell you that they're curious. They want to know if you really want them there, right? Because in their world, which is the community, it's not for us. It's not for fathers, right? And so, not to say that every dad is like that. You have those who will go in and do it. At the same time, there are those who just, they don't know and they don't understand. And this is where, our cultural sensitivity, we have to step careful to understand where they're coming from, right? And I've heard it as well say, I'm not going to work harder than him. Well, I would say that we do have to. And the reason why I say that is because we have the education. We understand the system. This thing is huge. When I was going through it, right? When I was going through the system, I didn't understand anything. I thought it was like criminal court. So I'm trying to find a lawyer. I mean, the things go on. And on top of that, nobody was there explaining things to me. And can you imagine someone who doesn't know how to ask questions, right? And so just some things to think about, not just, you have the history of where dads were being pushed out, but you also have, all these other components. And so I think it's more on how is our approach. But at the same time, I will play devil's advocate. There are some fathers who just will not go. They will not do it no matter what you do. I'm a realist. I think it's doing the best that we can do in our due diligence on helping fathers and helping the whole family, on moving forward and being able to be educated. And I call it education opportunities. I've had fathers say the same thing. I work and I do this and I do that and I do this. And so I respect that. And then bring out some education about what's taking place. And then I leave it there. And I would say a majority of the time, not all, but a majority of the time, the father goes back and thinks about it and then comes back and says, you know what, I didn't realize this was happening to my wife or my kids, right? And so just something to kind of throw out there as we're going in. And so if we can go to our next slide. Fatherhood advocacy milestone, right? And so these are some of the things that have transpired, as I shared, coming in some years back, and not understanding that this was a thing, because not everybody in the community understands child welfare until you've stepped into it, right? And so I didn't know that there was issues with fathers. I wasn't given the best treatment, right? And so, but I didn't take it as, oh, everyone else is doing it. I had to learn some things. But I also, when I came into the child welfare system, realized that there are some things that were taking place. And so the Federal Fatherhood Initiative, right, in 1995, Responsible Fatherhood Program came out. And so they began to bring out a lot of wonderful information. And they're the ones that bring out a lot of studies and working with fathers and different avenues. And so the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services launched an initiative to promote responsible fatherhood, focusing on economic stability, parenting skills, and reducing barriers to engagement. We look back at this, and I have a wonderful friend of mine, Mr. Lamar Henderson, who has been in fatherhood with his program and advocating for over 23, 24 years that he told me, right? And has done a wonderful job. With that, his question is, yet I'm still advocating. I'm still advocating. So the thing that he brought that out was that, as much as we seem changed, it always goes back. And there's those that push back on different things and the viewpoints, you know, that come out. And this is what happens inside the agencies that we continue to advocate. Now, I'm not saying that we're looking to get 100% perfection across the board where we never have to go through that. I've already came to the realization that I'm going to be continuing to advocate until my time is done doing this, right? Because, you know, it's just imperfect all the way around. There's no perfection. At the same time, are we moving the needle more, especially now that it's happening? It's an initiative nationwide, and there's still the same results. There's some good ones coming out. At the same time, there's a lot of bad results, right? And so 2005 Deficit Reduction Act funding for father programs began to come out as well. And so federal funding was allocated to support programs that enhance father involvement, particularly in low-income families. And of course, in 2010, Fatherhood Buzz campaign, an outreach effort by the National Responsive Fatherhood Clearinghouse to engage fathers throughout barbershops, faith-based groups, and community organizations. So these are some of the transformations and changes that were happening on a big level, not to mention that on the smaller level, or should I say within the state of California, there are fatherhood coalitions. At the same time, I still hear it, the struggle for resources for dads.
Mm-hmm.
It's still there. It's real. And it's not me speaking it. It's those within their own backyards, social workers, right? Peer supports, community-based organizations that we're training with who continue to bring out, we don't have enough resources for dads. Or we have resources, but they're not the same as they have for mom. Right. And I will admit that there are some, especially in the rural communities, that are just struggling with resources, period, for parents as well. Right. And so one of the things that I share with when we're talking with state or federal, when I have that privilege to sit at that table, is how do we create the resources if we're looking to change practice so that way there's no pushback to say, well, where are we going to send them to if not through our organization that really, you know, can only help but will cause possibly more harm than anything else. And so these are the conversations that we're having up in the state level as well. And so absolutely looking at, you know, how we can do that, engaging, but at the same time, not just my voice, but those that I've heard throughout the state of California, that there is such a lack for resources for dads, especially positive ones, right? Now, I'm not talking about domestic violence, right? There's plenty of domestic violence, especially for perpetrators.
Yes, there is.
Right. There's plenty of, you know, other things, but what about support groups and so on? So, Irene, you have your hand up?
Yes, good morning. I'm
Good morning.
currently working with a dad that is in need of like housing. He's been living in the streets and he needs a place so they can place the children. And there's just not that many places that will take a dad with children. And one of the things was they were saying, you know, because of the you know, the background, you know, like we have some like domestic violence, anger management, men here, like we don't allow children in here, like, and they said safety. So that brings like the like negative, like stereotype, you know, it's like, oh, you cannot bring your children here, but mom can have the children here at this rehab, but mom is not ready right now. So right now, when you were sharing it, just I've been trying to get this dad to a place where he can have his children placed and he's motivated and he wants it, but it's just no. So if you guys have any places, LA County, somewhere, put it on the chat so I can give that information to that because he really wants his children in his care, but there's just not that many places. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes. Go ahead, Robert. I'm sorry.
It's gender bias. Is what it is. So they won't allow a child to move into a sober living environment with men, but they will with women. I don't know. Women have backgrounds too. I just, you know, and so it's never an option for placement if men are in a sober living environment because of that issue. I think I've seen one in San Francisco that may have, and it was a while ago, that did allow a single father and his child a space, but not in like Alameda County or Contra Costa County. I don't see that at all. If fathers would like to get overnights, they need to move out of there. That's in order to move forward with reunification. And so it becomes a stumbling block in the case, another obstacle for fathers.
Absolutely. And Irene, I don't know if you're looking at the chat. There are some resources coming out, right? And this is what I love about it. And please do put resources in there, right? We're not here to say, oh, no, you got to run through us type of thing. No, if you got things going on that is helpful, right? Because our whole focus, once again, I want to bring it back around. Our whole focus is how do we help kiddos? How do we help kiddos? And understanding the importance of both parents being involved, engaged, right? And doing our due diligence in the best way that we can. And I wish I had something with 1,000 proof stamp on it that you do this and it will happen. I'd probably be a billionaire, trillionaire right now. I wouldn't be here, right? No, I probably would still be here because I love this. But you know, I think it's up to us in the community, within the agencies, to work together to share resources to be able to help the family, the whole family, right? And you know, it's unfortunate, but at the same time, once again, there are things that are happening and that we can begin to start getting involved with and communicate with each other to say, hey, you know, this resources is out there. And so we're not against that. Please put it in the chat, anything you feel that others should know about. You know, we want to make sure that the whole family is getting the services and resources that they need.
Equal support.
Absolutely.
Equal support. So if they're making a call to mom, they should be making a call to dad, either before or right after. Same number of calls. I know sometimes they may not answer. Take a note. Hey, they didn't answer. I called and reached out again. You know.
Nice. Absolutely. So we'll go to the next slide. There we are. CSS, California Department of Social Service Initiatives Program, right? Supporting Father Involvement Program from 2002 to 2012. CDSS Office of Child Abuse Prevention, OCAP, funded the Supporting Father Involvement SFI program. This evidence-based intervention aimed to enhance positive father involvement, encouraging fathers to take active roles in their families, reduce child abuse and neglect by strengthening family dynamics through increased father participation, and promote organization change, encouraging family resource centers to become more father friendly. And I can vouch that has been taking place out here in Riverside County, as our Dads Assisting Dads Coalition does partner with them, along with child support, child welfare, and all these other agencies, community-based organizations, and bringing out the message on the importance of being inclusive of the whole family, supporting the whole family, especially when we're looking at trying to change the way practice is done and into the prevention piece, right? How awesome would it be for families to be able to get the support they need in the communities where they don't have to come into the door of child welfare, where their kiddos are safe and everyone is getting what they need. And so I know I commend, and I do a lot of work with CDSS and diverse levels. Here is one of them as well with the PPAC, Parent Partner Advisory Committee, and you know, seeing all of the wonderful work that's being done. They were part of the task force for the mandated reporting to community supporting, and they're also doing a lot of other wonderful things. So we are moving forward in a lot of changes and transformations. And so I believe there are some there's some links to be able to look at some of those. Donnie, I'm not sure. She just went off. So, but yeah, so just wanted to throw that out there to you on all of the work that is being taken, that's taking place. And for those of you who are part of the Parent Partner Advisory Committee or the peer hubs, you know that CDSS is also very heavily involved there in communicating and hearing from the voices of lived experience. So,
yeah.
All right.
And a lot of the changes need to happen systematically, right? Not just within some organization, but it needs to begin at the top. That's where we're going to see a lot of the movement coming from either the federal side or the California Department of Social Services to support these movements.
Nice. And I see in the chat, Keith put in their father's group. Love that flyer. You know, for anyone who wants to take advantage of that, Tri-City Health in Pomona has a father group. Nice. Okay. Dismantled entirely. No one knows better than mom and dad. Absolutely, Devin, I agree. And this is why we're really pressing all this in the peer community, because you rock stars can bring a lot of advocating out, you know, in this. And I know I have, and like I said, I'm still a parent partner. I don't care. I have to work for an organization. I still use my experience to help others. Not that I force my experience on anyone, but the relation piece that a lot of families need, fathers and mothers, right? I work with anyone who wants to help and needs help. So it's important to be able to do that. And I know that the peer community is important. And so we're going up the chain of command to CDSS, HHS of California, even with federal.
Yeah.
And so Casey families, I work with them a lot as well to bring out the importance of peers. And so, yeah, so I'll stop with that and we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. You want to take the next one, Robert?
Yeah. So in the chat, can those who would like to participate, can you express one or two words that you learned from your father or your father figure? Like, what have you learned? Or one thing that you were taught from your father or someone who was a father figure in your life?
Faith, forgiveness. Lorena, I know you're a rock star. I know what you're doing out here, Riverside County. And
Yeah.
So play, honest and loyalty, unconditional love, responsibility, work hard, provider, unconditional love, responsibility. Now I see a theme going, fun and responsibility. I'd like to have a good time, work ethic, support and empathy, unconditional love, to be classy, strength and kindness, and failing is a step to success. Wow, that is a very good lesson right there. Never give up, respect yours. Never give up, always show up, learn not to trust others. Okay, hardworking, fun and hard work ethics, paternal opportunities, Old Town San Diego. Thank you, Gloria, for that. I know San Diego has a good program as well, Fatherhood of Pops. So I know those individuals out there, happy wife, happy. How about happy spouse, happy house, right? Let's play it both ways. Hard worker and provider, nothing. I learned to respect his own trauma in how it impacted his ability to show up for the family, unconditional love. What I didn't want to be as a father. Okay, Keith, absolutely. You know, sometimes we get that.
Yeah.
Be better, being a loving parent to my own, hardworking being myself and my ability. My dad was my first superhero. Absolutely. What unhealthy fatherhood looks like. As I said, you know, I am a realist and I understand that those things do come out, right? My dad wasn't there. He was actually 15 when I was born. He was still a kid himself, got himself in all kinds of trouble, in and out of prison. So I understand that. I understand that, you know, and I made a promise to my mom that I would never, if I had a child, I would never leave that child. And I kept it, became a single father for the first 4 years of my daughter's life. So I understand that all too as well. Always remembering to be humble and kind and love. Nice. Thank you all. Wow. And they're still coming in. All right. Grew up without my father. My husband made me realize that I did not miss out. He did. Unconditional love for our girls. Absolutely. Thank you, Wendy, for being vulnerable and sharing that. Finances and manipulation. Yep. Okay. All right. Thank you all for sharing and continue putting in the chat. So we're gonna go ahead and go to our next one. A lot of good. So now we're going to go into some more chat engagement. Now, 1 or 2 words that describe either a youth you have worked with or your own child's relationship with their father or father figure. As I shared with you in the beginning, we want to make sure that we're really going across the board. And so our youth community, our peer community includes youth partners, but also youth just in general. It's important to keep them in mind, to be inclusive of them. And so if you can put that in the chat, if you know, whether it's a youth you worked with or your own child's relationship with their father or father figure, 1 or 2 words that comes to mind. Admiration and love. They didn't feel supported by their dad. Love and trust. Oil and water. Okay, I know what that means. Trust, disconnected and missing out, very minimal. Disappointment and hurt, neglect. Hard worker, playful and unconditional, trauma and hurt. So there's a balance between, you know, the love and the trust and all that, and of course the impact, you know, whether they were there or they weren't there. So, and that's understandable. Mistrust and trauma, abuse, right? A child I worked with loved his dad no matter how much pain he caused. We know that to be true. You know, we know that when kiddos are in the system and they age out, a majority of them, I don't think I've heard anyone else share otherwise, but one of the first things that they do is what? Anyone know? What's the first thing that youth that age out of the system do?
They go home. They look for their family.
Look for their family, look for their parents,
Right.
mom and dad. It doesn't matter what happened.
What happened? Don't matter.
Yeah. And so, you know, even for myself, I realized this working in this environment where I look back and I was like, you know, there was something that was missing from my relationship with my dad. And so I wasn't in the system with him, but he wasn't around. And he started to come around and I needed that closure. So it was interesting to see that even myself, I wasn't in the system, but I still needed that closure. So I understood it a little bit. I'm not going to say I understand it all the way because, you know, that's a whole new different monster. And I know my daughter had her impact different from mine. And I don't ever say, oh, well, I know how you felt and all that. I don't ever tell her that because, you know, even though we both went through the system, we went through it in 2 different roles, right? Me as a parent, her as a child. I would never understand what my daughter went through. I just understand what I went through. And so I'll never put that out there. Just share, you know, just that piece of wanting just that closure. So let my children have their own feelings relationship with their dad, no matter what was going on between me and dad. I would never put my opinion into them. Absolutely. I've seen, unfortunately, in child welfare working with families, mom and dad, I don't know why they gave it to me, but I had both mom and dad, they were separated. They didn't even, you know, everything, court, all that stuff was happening between them, divorce and all that. And I seen where there was one young kiddo who was about 10 that was getting ready to have a nervous breakdown. And it was heartbreaking to see that. And so I just felt like I needed to let, you know, dad, because I was really talking more with him. I was talking with mom and all, but really with dad, it's just like, do you really see the impact that's happening to your child right now? Right. I had to bring that realization out, you know, on that piece right there. And so he saw, and at first he was in denial, but after a while, you couldn't deny what was happening. And so I'm happy to say that dad really just stopped, and it caused mom to stop because she saw it, you know. And sometimes that's what our role is, to bring that reality of everything to the best of our ability without changing anything. We're not there to change nothing. We're there to guide them to see things, and hopefully they change in a better path. So, all right. Shall we move on? A lot of wonderful things in the chat.
Yeah.
So assumptions about fathers in families. We talked a lot about, I know that we were talking about this And I love this group here because you all began to start talking about a lot of these different things, right? The assumptions of what, what's going on, and even why dad is not involved. We can easily paint a picture, or here's some words that paint a picture for us to why dad, oh, he's a deadbeat, he doesn't want anything to do with it. I've heard all kinds of things. And then when you sit down and talk to dad, and sometimes it was more like, well, everyone was against me, and no matter what I said, mom, was getting what she wanted, or mom's family was sharing things. And so there were dads were just like, you know what, I why do I even bother? Everyone, is against me. And that's sometimes this is sometimes why it's important for us to really dig a little deeper in to find out why dad is not coming around, right? If they open up and give them that ability to be able to get the support they need to know that, hey, they are important. Like I said, it's not 100% that it will happen, but they have more of a chance if there's someone to speak to them, right? To show them and to allow them to vent and not throw the assumption out there. Robert, you want to share anything before we go to the next slide? We're going to continue on this.
Yeah, no, we'll just speak on the next slide.
Okay. We go to the next slide, please.
All right.
So assumption and reality. You want to go ahead?
Yeah. So assumption and reality. So some assumptions that people may have are fathers are difficult to engage. Fathers are hard to reach and unwilling to participate in services and programs. Father's involvement is optional. Another assumption is that the presence or absence of a father does not significantly affect child and family outcomes, right? And on the opposite side, it says the reality. Fathers often feel excluded by services designed primarily for mothers or perceive them as unfriendly towards men. And I can speak on, I co-developed and founded a fatherhood support group in Alameda County in 2013, and it still continues today. It's called the Fatherhood Circle. They operate in Berkeley, still continuing. Some of their issues with other parenting classes were that they were just filled with moms and they didn't feel comfortable speaking openly about some of their issues in front of mothers, right? So Alameda County made an exception for some fathers to, in lieu of parenting class, they can come to the fatherhood support group. In lieu of parenting classes, where we spoke about parenting topics and talked about protective factors. So they knew, and we told them about how their involvement can affect their children. Another reality is research consistently shows that involved fathers positively impact children's academic performance and emotional well-being and behavior. The statistics speak for themselves. And I find that to be true in my experience in working within CFS. Is there anyone who would like to speak on maybe an assumption you may have, or an assumption that you've seen that is not true about working with fathers?
Hello, I'm Keith from Tri-City. As a father and somebody who works with fathers, because I'm one of the developers of the fathers group here at Tri-City, one of the things I learned is from my own personal experience is the empowerment that, for me, when I was empowered as a father, it allowed me to be a better partner to my wife and to be a better parent. And a lot of times in my experience, like when I say I would go to a PTA meeting, it'd be all mothers. And then they would be surprised I was there. And then they would be like, oh, are you here because you have to be or because you want to be? And, and then go to my, like, for instance, go to my daughter's, whatever, at the school. And they'd be like, what are you doing here? And or they would just completely ignore me. And literally one time I looked at my daughter, I was like, "Oh, is your mother not here?" And she's like, "No, I'm with my dad." And they're like, "Oh," and then as a person, that makes me feel like, excuse my language, like crap, because I'm like, I'm just as much a parent here as my wife. I'm here to support my child. And I'm not saying not all fathers are like that, but the ones who are there who do want to be a part, a lot of times they're overlooked. They're undervalued. You know, and I think when you have, because I know for me, when I was empowered, when I started doing things that going to groups with other men, was able to speak my truth as a father and got the support, it made me be able to open up even to my wife, to my kids. And it has created a better relationship for all of us. And I've tried to, impart that on into my work with fathers, allowing them to be empowered to see that, it's okay to show the vulnerable side of yourself to your children. Because, yes, for a lot of the kids, we're their superhero, but they also need to understand that we're human as well. Being able to show the example of being a positive role model in a positive relationship with their mother. Um, so things like that is what I think more of these programs can help promote.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a lot of times, and I share this a lot with everyone that we're training, when you see fathers coming out and they're posturing and they're pacing back and forth, right? And usually it's going to be with child welfare involvement, but it can be with any age of behavioral health and all that. Where are these emotions stemming from? Where is the posturing, the pacing back and forth, or the elevation of voices and all that, the aggression and all that? Where is that stemming from? Do we know? It's from fear. A majority of the time is fear. I'm afraid of you. I don't know what you do. I don't know why you're here. If it's child welfare, I assume that you're here to take my priceless treasures away from me. I've heard fathers in focus groups say, if you talk to my social worker, please tell them not to judge me by the way they met me. And so a lot of it comes out within that, and I hear about all the time, this dad's intimidating, right? He's aggressive, so be careful. And you go and sit down with him and have a conversation and really listen. A majority of them break down crying. And then they apologize after that. And so, I have to let them know, look, apology, you don't need to apologize. This is a part of humanity. Us as men, we carry trauma. We go through things. The rest of the world sometimes forgets that, or we're taught that culturally. And so I share that because it's something for us to keep in mind, that when we are working with fathers and they are doing these type of things or sitting back, and then there are some cultures where some individuals, they sit back and they stay quiet because you are a type of authority, even if you are peer. And before they respond, their culture teaches them how to respect authority, to take in everything. And before they respond, they really think about what it is that you're saying, so they can respond. And with that, at times it's said, oh, well, they don't want to be a part of this, right? And so the assumption is that they don't want to. But if they're showing up, that's powerful. That's them trying to figure out if it's true what they say about these systems, or if it's different, right? So anyone else? I see Laura, your hand's up.
You there, Laura?
If you are talking, Laura, you're on mute.
No.
Oh, there she is again. All right, Laura, you got two of them going on. Go for it.
I'm sorry. I'm not sure what's happening. That's a technical glitch.
Okay.
Please ignore.
Welcome to my world. Did you want to go ahead, Laura? Did you want to share anything, or is it just technical glitch?
Technical glitch. Thank you.
Okay, Maria, all yours.
Yes, no, I just wanted to share. We were working with this kiddo I don't know, he must have been about 7 or 8 years old. So he was having his visits with his dad over the weekend. And so what dad would do is that he would take him to, he would rent out a hotel and just have him there over the weekend. And of course, mom, she was really quick to call social worker and, inform her that that's not appropriate. And, I'm pretty sure they were feuding. But the thing is that it kept going that way. So whenever he didn't have the money to go to the hotel and take his kids there to spend time with them, he would cancel. So automatically they saw it as he's not interested. He doesn't want to see the kids. He doesn't want to spend time with the kids. And I think more than anything, he never said anything, but I think more than anything, it was embarrassment that he didn't have anywhere to take the kiddos. So sadly, at the end, they took his, parental rights. But I think that if he would have spoke up, I mean, I don't know, maybe even at the county building, they would have, held those visits. So it was really sad, but, that's very unfortunate. So I know that he was trying, he was really trying, but it was just that he wasn't able to have a place for these kids. So that's it.
Can
Yeah.
I piggyback on what you say?
Sure.
I think, like you said, it's a lot of biases and parent understanding where parents are coming from. And one of the things that I noticed right away is sometimes, and forgive me for if there's any social worker right there, but no offense. I just want to make sure that they meet their needs because they send visitations far away from them when they know that they have to take 2 or 3 buses and have parents running around trying to catch the bus. And if they miss it, that's it, the visitation is over. And, it's just heartbreaking to see those efforts that they make coming, running from work, then have to take the bus to go and see their kids and not be able to and see their kids because the social workers say, if you don't get here at this time, the visitation is canceled. Same thing it goes with the resources, like the other lady mentioned earlier about the housing. It's just a struggle to get parents to work. And you mentioned that too, advocating for them because sometimes I do make an appointments with social workers and the father to be able to come into terms. And once I get involved, the social workers start being more lenient and more flexible towards them. I'm sorry. And I guess as my role is continue to advocate for them, and I see the struggle all the time. I see the lack of resources all the times for the parents. That's all.
Yeah.
No,
And,
thank you.
and that's truthful. I see some counties cover hotel costs for parents who didn't have anywhere to visit. Yeah, I've jumped on BART and bus to take a dad to his visit to show him the way how to get there so that he wouldn't be 15 minutes late and they would cancel the visit. I've done that. I continue to do that. I did that 2 months ago. And rode the public transit in order to get him there. And we had to figure out what time he needs to leave, what time he needs to be on that BART train, and what time he needs to catch the bus in order to be there on time. Those are the little things, right? And I do the same for mothers too, if they don't know. But those are the little things that can show somebody a difference in the system, and that some people really do care about whether or not they show up to a visit or not, right?
Caleb has their hand up.
Yeah, just on the assumptions, something that I've always seen as while serving the community is that there's this idea that fathers are not required or needed within the family structure, or that they're replaceable. That the voice of a father, like for my kid, when the mom tells her to do something, like, yeah, but then when I tell her to do something, they like straighten their back up and they do it. There's a difference of a male voice, and I think that's often lost of the value that a male has in the family dynamic. Um, and it's usually just that the male can only has monetary value to provide. So if they're not paying child support, or if they're not providing in the way they should be, then they don't have any value. They're not good for anything. As a service provider, I just always see that even the services for men, they don't really exist. Like shelters are usually only women shelters. You would rarely find a shelter that services men. Um, Sexual assault, that's something that also it happens disproportionately to women, but it's very unreported for men and young men. There's not enough services that address sexual assault with men, domestic violence with men, and when when young men or men do come forward, it's a stigma, it's a shame, and then there's not any resources for them. So it's kind of it's a very difficult situation as a provider.
Absolutely. Thank you, Caleb, for sharing. Diana? We'll do Diana, and then we'll move on for the sake of time. I wish we can stay here. We will have that focus session later on. So go ahead, Diana. It's all yours. I can't hear you, Diana. I think your earphones might be.
Diana, you can always write your comment in the chat too while you're trying to figure it out.
Hear me?
Oh, there you
No,
go.
I can't hear you. That's the problem now. Okay.
We can hear you now.
There we go. All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, I was thinking that, yeah, it seems like the guys that I get, or the men, I should say, the fathers, that yeah, the first focus is get a job. Well, you know, the moms I help, the first focus is, well, let's see what kind of recovery or whatever it is you need, whether it's, you know, therapy or substance abuse, you know, treatment. But what I've also noticed is that because I have some dads that the moms were the ones that had substance abuse, and they don't, and they test for them and everything, they're clean, and so there's a thing called protective capacity, right? There's like very little that they guide them to do, so they don't really have much that they have to do, and yet it seems like, and then they have this thing where basically they have to stay away from mom, which is the protective capacity, I suppose. But I think the harder thing for men is that, like when I'm working with them, we're talking about protective capacity, and you know, most of them they're saying that they're staying away from mom, but I'm getting a weird feeling that maybe, you know, they're afraid to say that anything. But then I had a couple of them be real honest, say, you know what, I just can't see her out there and me not help her, and that's going to get them in trouble as far as getting their kids back. But I feel like it's a different dynamic, that they want to take care, like they have a different kind of protective capacity idea as being a man than like a woman does. And I don't know how to help them through that. And it seems like there's boundaries and stuff, but then they don't tell them anything like go to Al-Anon or anything like that. And actually I've been referring some of them, and it's really helping them. But there's no thing that says that's the issue. This is the issue. Let's use this solution for that kind of problem. Anyway, that's all I just wanted to say.
Oh, that's an excellent point, Anna. That's a very excellent point. There's not a lot of that, you know, guidance and all going forward, right? You do get every so often where there's someone who's really, you know, in child welfare, as a social worker that's working with both parents and being as equal as they can be, more on giving dad what he needs, you know, because they're two different individuals. You know, it's not just gender; it's just individuals, you know, period. Me and Robert, both Hispanic men, you know, but if we come to our homes, we may be running things differently, right? We may not like the same food. Just because we're Hispanic does not mean we're the same, right? It's, he may believe in one thing religion wise, and I practice something different, right? So there are so many dynamics when we're looking at that. The same thing with mom and dad. Men function differently, right? We're very short on conversation unless you have a man like me that doesn't shut up. I can talk for days, right? I'm a preacher. There you go. But then you have others who are just, and I know, and the communication is we can do head nods and communicate, and everybody's like, "Whoa, what just happened?" Right? And so I think all of that what you're sharing is important, and for us to keep in mind as well. Sometimes that, and I'll give you this nugget as well, that when you do ask a father, "Are you good?" and he says, "Yeah, I'm good," check in, because he's not good. He's not good, right? The assumption of, oh yeah, he's got it, and everything else. I would say even more so, or begin to explain in such a way that's not like, oh, I know you're not, and making him feel, dumb or anything like that. Just explain, I just want to take this a step further, just to kind of lay it out there. That's how you begin to build that rapport with that gentleman, because with that father, because they're getting that one attention that really men don't get, and two, someone's going the extra mile, and believe it or not, it does go a long way. So, but thank you for that. It's very important. So let's go to our next slide. Or you want to say something, Robert?
Yeah, real quick. I come across that a lot. I work with a lot of fathers on my caseload, and some are still in love with the mother, right? They're honestly still in love with the mother. And a lot of them I just work the protective factors with. Because some of them have no idea of what's like dangerous. Like what do the counties consider dangerous? Right? What does that actually mean? And they consider just leaving that child with mom dangerous. Right? So they need to understand that, right? Like, this is how they're looking at it. This is what they're looking at. This is how we can build on that. And I work with a lot of fathers who really don't have any idea of what exactly these agencies are looking for. So just making sure that they understand that,
Absolutely. To the best of our ability, of course.
Yeah, I got 2 cases right now where that's happening.
Nice. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, everyone else as well, for sharing. So let's go to the next slide. Right, suppressing emotions, right? And so fathers are often conditioned to be strong and to avoid vulnerability. And so a phrase like "man up" or "boys don't cry" reinforce emotional suppression. We talked about this throughout this journey that we've been all on in this webinar. And so I appreciate you all and your feedback and sharing these things, because it's true. There's still this piece happening. And we press into culture, we press into society, right? Who they're hanging out with. Because when we look at, if we're focusing on child welfare, majority of the cases that come in are not from, these nice neighborhoods where the upbringing, there are times that it does have it, but it's more in, the lower class communities, right? And I know that because, I was there, not to say that I'm rich and I got everything going on, right? So, but it's something about a lot of who we have coming in who don't know any better, right? And this is the upbringing, especially if they're considered from the streets. I understand it all too well. As a teenager, that's what I was. I grew up, once again, with my mom who did the best she could, and I was a statistic at one time. So these statistics also speak to my life. We didn't come into child welfare, luckily, but it was something that, basically, we've seen a lot of other individuals that we were a part of doing that. And of course, as a parent, going through it, it was something that was eye-opening, that we never thought was wrong at times, and come to find out that some of it wasn't. But this right here is huge for men. When you speak to a lot of them, right? A lot of them, like as I shared with you earlier, where do these emotions of posturing come up from? What are these the emotions of standing up? And then Diana brought it out really good on that protective factor, right? I need to protect my family. You are here. You are a concern to me, and I'll even put it into even with behavioral health, mental health. For some cultures, it's taboo. I don't got any mental health issues. I don't have any problems. The assumption is, and excuse the way I bring it out, but this is the reality of a lot of families. Me or my kids are not crazy. That's the assumption of mental health. It's because there's not the educational piece of understanding. And this is why I share with us here when we say, oh, we're not going to work harder than, dad, then I would say, again, we really need to rethink this because this is a lot of the community. Now, there is more education coming out. I will say that on all of these things on what mental health is. It's beyond just this part, and so on. And so we have our peer community that's coming in and bringing it out. At the same time, I would say that it's still there. It's still like I need to get a better understanding. And sometimes it's unfortunately it comes out when something happens within the family. And at that time, trauma is hitting, so you're dealing with all of that. And so just something to think about. So many fathers internalize their struggles, leading to anger, frustration, withdrawal. Emotional isolation can contribute to strained family relationships and mental health issues. There it is as well, right? If you would have asked me 15 years ago about, mental health issues or anything like that, I would have called you crazy, right? I don't have that, and not realizing that trauma is a part of that. So I was not educated on it. And so within my culture, within my family, we didn't do that, right? Counseling didn't come, from behavioral health or anything, because that would be something, that was outside. And so I had to be educated myself. And so that's why I say when we're dealing, or not dealing, when we're working, I'm sorry, that's a bad word to use. When we're working with fathers, right, we have to also come with this understanding that not everyone is coming from the same place that we are now at. And I even have to remember that. I have to remember and be careful with my language and what I'm speaking, because I can start speaking agency quickly, acronyms and all kinds of different things, right? And they'll just be like nodding their heads, but they're totally lost. And so I think it's a reminder for us as well, right? That they are coming with a lot of emotions, even things that have happened to them from back in the day when they were small, they were young, things that happened, they were traumatized, they were abused, and they didn't come into the system, but it would, things would take place. I could tell you my family history on certain things that had taken place and that I went through that would be considered, traumatizing. And then, of course, you got the ACEs that comes in, and there's just so much that needs to be brought out in order for our fathers to understand. But it has to start with rapport building. Because no matter how much education you put out there, all information, all that, if they don't trust you, or if our attitude is not the right attitude, they're not going to hear anything we say. So, Robert, did you understand anything?
Yeah, I agree. I dig into some fathers' history, and they're telling me this, and I say, "You have trauma," and they say, "No, I don't." They don't want to. They don't want to accept that. It seems like it's making them look weak. How could I be susceptible to that stuff? And I tell them, this is a traumatic event that affects you and everyone who's around at that time. This is another traumatic event. They don't even understand that. They don't want to acknowledge that they have trauma, right? I know I didn't. I was traumatizing myself in my bad behaviors. Did I want to acknowledge that? No, not at the time. So of course I was traumatizing other people if I was traumatizing myself, right? And things that I think of in my head, as fathers, they don't understand that. So yeah, I hit them with the ACEs for both them and their children. And then they start looking at it differently.
So now that we're in that subject matter, right? Fathers have trauma too, and we've been sharing about this. We've been talking about this just a little bit. Here's a couple things to bring out as we're going through this, right? The lack of positive role models. I shared about that, right? The upbringing. We don't know until we actually get to know the individual, where they're coming from. Who is the influence in their lives? Who are the influence to this day in their lives, right? Not to mention, we talked about, Dana brought it up very strongly as fathers, as men, we're protectors. That's within us. We protect. And when our families are being impacted, where someone's coming in and saying you're not doing your job, there is an impact. I felt it. I felt it strong, right? I was in church. I changed my life and everything like that. And I still went through this. And the feeling of failure was so heavy, right? You know, how did I not protect my family? I didn't understand. I was confused. And so custody battles and co-parenting conflicts can leave fathers feeling marginalized and powerless, right? You know, these are some of the other, you know, things that are impactful. If we don't pay attention to the best of our ability and be able to give them the opportunity to show us who they are, we don't get to see this side, to understand that there is more beyond the situation. It's piled on top, and for some, it's piled and piled and piled and never given the opportunity to speak. And this is why when I'm sharing about venting, right, when they're elevating their voice and yelling, if you can handle it, and I say this very, very respectfully, know yourself as well. But if you can handle it and they're venting, they're going to answer questions that you may not have to ask, and then they're going to let you know what's wrong with them. And I would say majority of the time, they're going to be like, wow. And my thing is I throw apologies and, oh man, I'm sorry. Sorry to hear that, man. I'm sorry you had to go through that. And I've been told many times, you're the first one to apologize to me. And I've even been told, you're the first one didn't hang up on me, right? I've gotten hung up on. And so it's something that, you know, bringing out this importance of understanding that there's trauma, right? Dad has trauma. This man up and all that stuff that's been put out there, you know, we can actually put that again if we fail to realize that they need to be heard, right? Even with the DV, there was one where a gentleman went, he says, hey, you know, I'm getting hit by my wife. And the social worker was like, man, you're a big guy. What, you know, you can't handle it? Wow. So, Ramona.
Yeah, I'm lucky that I'm married, I guess, because, you know, women and men think very differently. And sometimes I admire men because I say they think in black and white. Once they make a decision, it's done, right? Women don't. I think we think in 100 shades of gray, 50 grades of shade. So, but I always get his perspective. But one of the things that's also important, and I had a therapist tell me this, was that sometimes dads think that the family would be better off without them, especially when they're really struggling. But for them to understand that, especially in the male children, you know, it is very important for them to be there, especially when they're teenagers, when they're seeking out what it is a male identity. You know, I had a therapist tell me, yeah, you know, they're the mother's eye, but once they turn teenagers, they look towards that to find out what does it mean to be a man. And that's what sometimes fathers don't get. That how important. And then one of the big questions I always ask, how was your relationship with your dad? And then they kind of hesitate. I go, wouldn't you want to change that for your son? And that's where they'll like say how, and then they're more engaged. But you know, sometimes I do have to seek a male to get their perspective because we think very different, for me to understand and to be able to reach him where he's at.
Absolutely, Ramona. Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. My mom, you know, she still is my hero. She was there for me. She taught me. She did the best she could to tell me morals. She did all of these things. She was a wonderful mother, and she still is, right? She's still here. And I acknowledge her. With that, there was still something missing. And I did have some father figures. Yet I still found myself in the midst of looking and trying to find myself as a teenager. You know, abusing substances, drugs, and alcohol, and you know, getting into the street, you know, culture out there, you know, out here in California, you know, getting into, I'll just call it out, gangs, all of these different things, you know, trying to find myself, trying to find role models, you know, and not to say my grandfather here wasn't the greatest, wasn't good, but he wasn't also there all the time. He couldn't be. He had to provide. So you're absolutely right. There's just something about that piece. And this is why we really push that both parents are vital, right?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, sometimes the father, you know, is not in the picture for whatever reason. It can even be, you know, death. But a father figure role, a man stepping into that it's vital, right? It gives them the ability to be able to find a piece of themselves to be able to develop. Once again, like I said, I'm not throwing any shade at anyone. We know moms are wonderful and beautiful. Everyone knows that, right? This is why we're here talking about fathers, and like I said, moms need support too, but I will not apologize for talking about fathers, men, because that right now is what a lot of our nation is dealing with, is how do we include both parents, whether together or separate, for the sake of that child, the importance of bringing them together. And so, to be able to have that relationship. And of course, there are times where you can't. It's just not, whether it's safety or whether it's dad's not there. But I think it's important to really stress that. And oh my God, Donnie, Joe, sign at me. The time.
I've been texting you, Roger.
Okay, all right. So let's go to our next slide. We go to the next, supporting fatherhood engagement.
We have
We'll go to the
5
next.
minutes, Roger. Let's do 2
5
things at a time. First, I want to thank both Roger and Robert for bringing this vital information to us today around fatherhood engagement. We will have a focused group around fatherhood engagement on March 28th from 1 to 3 o'clock. Here at the Resource Center for Family Focused Practice, we understand balancing work, life, and education can be super challenging. So what we've done is focus sessions make a professional development accessible and effective by providing an environment where you can come and meet Roger and Robert separately from this webinar today, ask questions, receive guidance, and do a deeper dive in today's topics and more around peer and parent partnership. Again, that is March 28th, 1 to 3 p.m. I will drop that in the chat right now for you as well. Also, James will be dropping our, I was going to call it a resume, and that is not what it's called. Our evaluation in the chat. Please, please, please take a moment and fill out that evaluation. They are so important to us. Again, we thank everybody for being here today. And we do take that feedback into consideration and put it towards our following webinars to come. With that, the evaluation poll is up. I will drop the focus session in to meet Roger and Robert in March. Take it away, Roger and Robert. Thank you.
All righty. So I think that at this time, we're going to go ahead and bring it to a close to be able to do the webinar evaluation. So James, you want to go ahead and take down the PowerPoint. It has been a privilege, and as Donnie said, we will have that opportunity to be able to talk more and answer more questions, to the best of our abilities. At the same time, if there's something that was missed, please put it into the evaluation. My apologies. Technology, along with my mouth, equals ran out of time. So, but Robert, I appreciate you, and I want to turn it over to you. If you have any last words? Everybody's filling out their evaluations.
No, just remember that this is family focused. All the work that I do is family focused. I do pay attention a little bit more to some fathers who are struggling behind, because I know how I felt when going through the system. But yeah, I'm here to reunify families.
Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you all. Go ahead.
I think one of the key takeaways from this morning particularly is because the audience and participants, you were all so engaged today, you did hit the few slides that Roger and Robert did not get to today. That was absolutely part of your conversation already, just within the engagement you all were bringing to today's webinar. So I thank you all for that. And I know the gentlemen do appreciate the active questions, involvement, engagement. I feel your power and heart for youth and families across the state of California. We're all doing the great work of trying to do our best with what we have in the systems that we're working within, and keeping youth and families together. So with that, at 10:58.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Took them perfectly, said it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We had such, I couldn't ask for a better crowd, right? I appreciate you all and what you brought in the chat, in our conversations. And yeah, you really did hit, you did hit these slides. So we talked about pretty much everything that we were able to bring out. And so, yeah, I will be quiet now because I know it's 1 minute away.
And
So-
please join us. Both Robert Martinez and Roger De Leon will be joining us March 28th from 1 to 3 o'clock.
Yes.
This is a more intimate space where the gentlemen are not doing a presentation. You get to join us for those 2 hours. Ask anything in regards to fatherhood engagement, peer and parent partner work. It's an open forum. And so we encourage everyone to come and join us. Our first focus session around our peer introduction webinar was very successful. And so we are hoping to see you all then.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Danae and Roger
And thank you,
Powerhouse
sir.
in the house.
and James.
Oh, of course.
Oh,
we
yeah.
can- James.
you.
Everybody knows James Ellen. It was so beautiful seeing your face.
Thanks.
We'll see you soon.
You guys have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you. You too.
Thanks.
Bye, Adam. Thank you.
Donna, is the
Yes.
focus group, is that in person at UC Davis or is it on Zoom?